Hello everyone, and welcome to the video solution of the hard option of the Unit 2 assignment, the VBA of Wallstreet. You are well on your way to becoming a programmer and Excel master. In this homework assignment, you will use VBA scripting to analyze a year's worth of real stock market data. So our hard option is going to build on the solution from the moderate option. So let's take a look at what that is asking us to do. We want to create a script that will loop through all the stocks and take the following information. Yearly change from the stock price at the beginning of the year to the price at the end of the year, the percent change in that stock's price from the beginning of the year to the end, the total volume of the stock traded over the year, and the ticker symbol. We also want to apply conditional formatting to highlight a yearly increase in the stock price in green and a decrease in the stock price in red. So it should look a little something like the picture right here. Alright, and so in addition to that, for the hard option, we want to identify this stock with the greatest percentage increase in its price, and the stock that suffered the greatest percentage decrease in its price, and finally, we want to identify the stock with the greatest trade volume. So it should look a little something like this right here. So it looks almost exactly the same like the moderate option, but just with the added information right here. So let's go ahead and open up our Excel file, and as you can see, we have our ticker, date, open, high, low, close, and our volume columns. And as you scroll down, you can see that all the information is changing, the dates change, and it's right there. The ticker value changes too. So let's go ahead and open up our Visual Basic Editor. The first thing we want to do is open our sub. Thankfully, Excel automatically ends the sub for you. You want to make sure that you take care to have that there, otherwise your code is not going to run. Next, I'm going to set some dimensions or variables that will help us in calculating our metrics. Alright, so these are going to help us with calculating our metrics. Total is going to refer to the total stock volume. I is going to help us loop through our rows. Change is going to help us calculate the difference in stock price from the beginning of the year to the end. J is going to help us in positioning our new information in our new table with all the stock tickers at the correct place. Start is going to help us with calculating the first open non-zero stock price. Row count is going to help us calculate how many rows are in each sheet, because we don't want to hard code the number of rows into our code. And percent change is going to help us calculate the percentage change in the stock price. Next, I'm going to set the title rows for our new information. So what we have here are setting our title rows for the information that we want to find out. So we have ticker, yearly change, percent change, total stock volume. Okay, so that's the initial table from the moderate solution. And now for the hard option, we want ticker value, greatest percentage increase, greatest percentage decrease, and greatest total volume. So if we take a look, P1, Q1, O2, 3, and 4. So P1, Q1, O2, 3, and 4. So these are the values that we just inserted, and this is where the data that we find will go. Alright, next we want to set some initial values. So what this is we're setting J to 0 initially because we haven't inserted any rows yet. The total stock volume is also going to be initially 0. The change, again, we haven't calculated anything, so we're going to start the change with 0 since we don't know if a stock has changed price over the year. And start is equal to 2 because if you take a look at the data, you see that this ticker starts on row 2. We want to make sure that we don't calculate including these. Next, we're going to get the row number of the last row with data. Okay, so what this does is it takes a look at column A and counts the number of rows there with data. And then we store that into row count so that we don't have to hard code our loop to loop through our rows. And that is the next thing we're going to do. Okay, so that's going to start on row 2 and go all the way to the end of row count. Okay, so next we're going to start with a conditional. We're going to first check if the ticker changes, then we're going to print some results. We're going to do couple things out of order. So we're actually going to work on the condition where if the ticker is different, what we want to happen versus if the ticker stays the same. Okay, so what we're checking here is we're looking at the next row, column 1, column A, which, if you recall, is the ticker column. And we're looking at the value of that, and we're checking whether it's not equal to, which is what this symbol means, to the current value, to the current row, column A. If they're not equal, which means that the ticker value has changed, then we are going to print results and do our calculations. So the first thing we want to do is we want to add the current stock volume to our total. So what we're doing here is we're making sure that our total is up to date because we don't want to forget about our current row. Next, we're going to handle zero total volume. Okay, so here we're inserting our information. So I into the I row, which if you recall holds the ticker, we're just inserting the current ticker value. And then into J goes the yearly change, which is 0 if the total is 0. And then percent change again would be 0. And total stock volume again should be 0 since we are handling a total stock volume of 0. Alright, so if that isn't the case, we're going to find the first non-zero starting value. So what we're going to do here is we're going to check that the first open value is non-zero. So if you take a look back here, column 3 is our open value, open stock values. So if it's 0, then we don't want to include that because that might mean that the stock hadn't been introduced yet. So we keep going until we find a value in that column for that ticker that isn't 0. So what this is going to do is we're going to start with our find value, which starts at start. So right now, if we recall, start is 2. And this will get updated as you go through the ticker values. Find value is going to equal start, and then we're going to loop through and we're going to check if from that first position, start, to the last row of that ticker, if we can find a value for the open that isn't 0. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're looping through and we're checking to find our non-zero value. Once we find that non-zero value, we're going to change our start number to the cell, to the row where we found the non-zero value. And then we're going to exit the for because we don't want the start value to change after that. Then we want to make sure to end all of our statements. Now we have our proper start value. Now if the first stock value, so the open price value of that stock, is not equal to 0, then this code is not going to run. This if statement that we just created right here is not going to run because we already have our proper start value. Okay, next we're going to calculate the change in the stock price from the beginning of the year to the end of the year and the percentage change. Alright, so what we have here is we are taking the current row, which is our last row of data for this ticker. We're looking at column column 6, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is our close value. And we're subtracting the first row for that ticker with data from our open. So that's how we're going to calculate the change. The first open stock price, the difference between the first open stock price and the last closed stock price. All right, and the percent change is calculated by taking that change in stock price and then dividing by the initial open price and timing by 100, rounding by 2. Okay. Next, we're going to update our start value so that it starts for the first row of the next ticker. Okay, so all this does is it makes sure that the next row is the correct start position. Next, we're going to print the results that we calculated. So we've just taken the values that we've calculated and returned them into columns I, J, K, and L. So the current ticker, the correct change, so that's the change in the stock price, the percentage change, and the total stock volume. Next, we're going to work on the conditional formatting for our change in stock price. Alright, so this is a fancy if statement. If you've done JavaScript before, it's like a switch. We are just checking different cases for our change. So if it's greater than 0, we're going to color it in green, which is color index 4. If it's less than 0, we're going to color it in red, color index 3. And otherwise, if it's 0, we're going to just leave it as white. So that brings us to the end of our if statement where we were handling whether total volume was 0. So all we do to end that is... Next, we're going to reset the variables for our new stock ticker. Okay, so total goes back to 0, change also goes back to 0. J, however, increases by 1 because we want to make sure that our new stock ticker is introduced in a new row. Alright, so now we're going to handle the condition of what if the stock ticker is the same. So all that's going to be is that's just going to be an else statement. Alright, so this is just going to be the only thing we want to do if the ticker stays the same. We're going to just add our stock volume and keep adding it to the total. And that ends our if on if the ticker value changes. And we're actually also going to end our loop because that's all that we want to do looping through the data. Now that we have everything calculated, we are going to figure out the hard option things. So if you remember, we want to identify the stock with the greatest percentage increase in its price, the stock that suffered the greatest percentage decrease in its price, and finally the stock with the greatest trade volume. So we're going to be looking at K and L. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the maximum and minimum of the percent changes and the maximum total stock volume and store them into our Q columns as we specified earlier. Alright, so what we've done here is we found the maximum minimum in column K, which if we scroll up we can see that column K is our percent change and L is our total stock volume. So we found the maximum and minimum and stored them into column Q in row 2 and 3. And we've done the same and found the maximum in L, which is total stock volume, and stored it into Q4. Now what this does is we go from K2, which is the very first row with data, and we go to row count, which would be the last one. Alright, now that we have the numbers for our maximum and minimums, we want to find out which tickers are associated with those numbers. Alright, so what we have here are the row numbers where each of these tickers are found. So we're using a worksheet function called match, where we look at the number that we're looking for, which is the greatest percentage increase in stock price, and then that's what we want to match to. And then we look at the range, and then the 0 represents that we want an exact match. So let's take a quick look at the documentation. So let's see, worksheet function.match. Alright, so we have 3 arguments. The 2 required ones, the lookup value, which is our greatest percentage increase, our lookup array, which is where we want to look for it, and our match types, -1, 0, or 1. So if we scroll down real quick, we'll see that a 1 match finds the largest value that is less than or equal to. A 0 match finds the first value that is exactly equal to the lookup value. And a -1 match finds the smallest value that is greater than or equal to the lookup value. So since we want the exact match, we'll do 0. Alright, next we are going to finally input those ticker values into our table. Alright, so here we're just taking those row numbers that we found and inserting them into our column P. So we have increased number +1, and the reason we do the +1 is because we want to make sure that we don't include the header count. So the increased number will give us the actual row that it's in, but we want to look 1 down. It takes increased number +1 from column 9. So if we take a look, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's column I. So if you remember, column I is where we insert our new ticker values. All right, and that is the solution to the hard option of the VBA of Wall Street. Let's go ahead and run it. All right, not to worry if that takes some time. You're doing a lot of work to a lot of data. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. And as you can see, we have ticker, our yearly change, our percent change in the total stock volume. Our yearly change is formatted properly. You know, negatives are all red and all the positives are green. All right, and if we scroll a little further, let's go back up, we can see our hard option solutions. So we have greatest percentage increase, greatest percentage decrease. All right, and you can see there is an error here. We have DM and DM, so let's take a quick look at our code. And that is because I wrote increase number both times here. So let's just change that to decrease number and run it again. All right, so we went ahead and reran that. And the ticker changed to the correct one. And so you can tell that it isn't the right one because you did have the different percentage values here, but with the same ticker. So, that doesn't really make sense. So it's a good thing to always check your code. And that is the solution. And now let's just take a quick look at what we want to do for the bonus. Okay, so we want to just make sure that the script will run on every worksheet regardless, and so just by running it once. So let's switch back, and this is a very easy thing to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all of this out for right now. All right, so we're going to cut all of this out. And we're just going to start with adding one dimension. So what this does is it allows us to loop through all the worksheets available in the workbook. Okay, next I'm going to loop through each of the worksheets. And now I'm going to paste in what I cut out. We have our title rows. So what we're going to do is to make sure that it works for each worksheet, we're going to add a WS dot in front of each of these. Now what's going to happen is you're going to want that WS dot anytime you see range or cells. So I'm going to go ahead and add that through everything. So I went ahead and added WS dot in front of all of the ranges and the cells that I saw throughout the entire code. All right, so let's go ahead and run that. And as you can see, there was an error because I forgot to add in next worksheet at the end. All right, remember you want to make sure that you close all your if statements and all your for loops. So the next worksheet allows us to loop through all of them. All right, not to worry if that took even longer. Remember you're working on all of the sheets now, and that's going to be a lot of data. Let's go take a look. Okay, nothing seems to have changed here, which is good for us so far. Let's take a look at 2015. All right, perfect. We have our yearly change, our percent change. Everything seems to be coded properly. And our greatest percentage increase and our greatest decrease. And let's take one more look at 2016. And all of that ran in one click. All right, and that is the solution to the bonus part of the hard option of the VBA of Wall Street.